in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight it's social-emotional learning, this program at school that teaches students mindfulness, helps them manage feelings and show empathy for other people. Think of it kind of like, journaling or meditation. And even though it's been around for years, it's suddenly becoming more and more controversial, and in some instances, a target for conservative groups. Why? They see it as a stepping stone to critical race theory. Vaughn Hillyard takes a look at how schools are helping students with their own social awareness, while some parents are sounding the alarm.
How do you feel this morning, Kaylee girl?
I'm happy.
This is social-emotional learning.
It's all about building the relationships and knowing the child inside and outside the classroom.
Thousands of schools across the country are using SEL practices to help students both learn and cope with difficult emotions.
We come into class and sometimes the teachers will ask us, how do you feel? Are you okay? And then me talking to them will help me with my schoolwork. 19
states have set standards for SEL programs. Across the country, schools and districts have increased spending on SEL by 45% since 2019. March 11th was the second annual International Social-Emotional Learning Day. President Biden and the First Lady released a statement in support. But many of the same so-called parents' rights groups that have taken aim at critical race theory and vaccine mandates are now gunning for SEL. The curriculum has been challenged in more than a half a dozen states.
They talk about power and privilege, which are tenets of critical race theory. They also have a very heavy LGBTQIA agenda.
There's lots of research to suggest that if kids don't feel valued in school, if they feel disconnected, they're not going to engage.
Utah Parents United convinced one school district to remove an SEL curriculum after they discovered one of the lessons linked to a website about dating and sex.
What does social-emotional learning look like?
SEL has also become a frequent target of conservative media. The Federalist has called SEL a vehicle for anti-white racism, while Breitbart says it's a Trojan horse for CRT. A National Review says it's the next fight in education. But proponents say the decade-old idea has little to do with identity politics and was not previously controversial.
So much of this conversation comes around how do we make sure we are empowering and encouraging students to really use their voice.
To what extent would you argue that it is more important now in a more politically divisive, especially when we're talking about issues of race in our classrooms here today?
It helps us understand different perspectives, first and foremost, and who doesn't need that right now? I mean, all of us are coming to conversations, whether it's coming out of the pandemic, whether it is political, and it is so important to be able to take a moment and understand not only your perspective, but the perspective of others.
But today's reality is one of friction, again, over teachings in the classrooms where kids are left to be on the front lines of the culture war's consequences.
Vaughn Hillyard joining us now. Vaughn, I'm glad that you're bringing this reporting to us. And what I think is important here, too, is it's not like social-emotional learning looks the exact same in every single state, right?
Right. To be clear, about half of the states actually don't have statewide standards here. This is a community to school district decision in so many places here. And again, these are guidelines. These are standards. This is not meant to be indoctrination, right? Is a lot of the criticism you hear on the right would suggest. More so, this is a way for educators and teachers who spend 7-8 hours a day with these young people on a daily basis to be able to better engage with their students about these social issues that are not only surrounding their communities and their schools, but also themselves. To, you mentioned meditating, right? To be able to how to communicate and say hi to individuals. There are, though, some tough conversations. In California, they do have a statewide standard that says, in part, saying students must have an educational experience that is personalized, culturally relevant, and responsive, and intentionally addresses racism and implicit bias. And to be clear, these issues of racism are very prevalent in so many communities, and there are dynamics that exist in classrooms here. And essentially what these standards do is allow these teachers, these educators, to better have those conversations and to better be able to address sort of these social awareness issues that students are undoubtedly facing, especially at the heart of this pandemic and at a time in which we are so politically divided as well.
Vaughn Hillyard, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.